Hey, this is Dennis, and welcome to another episode of the Grounded Reason podcast, where tech and policy collide.
Oh, that was dramatic.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to do like the nightly news anchor kind of thing, you know, where they're like,
when I was joking around and being like, "Good night and good luck."
right? Or like they'll do the, and he didn't know and didn't care. You know what I mean? Like how they'll do that pause with
dramatic pause. I learned in school.
Right. I'll have some milk and some eggs.
Ew, milk and eggs.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just... That's what happens when you just, stream of consciousness riff.
Exactly.
Stuff happens. So today, we're going to be talking about... Last week, we were discussing the moves that Disney made and how they're going to be putting out their own streaming service.
Yep.
Well, now, everyone's losing their shit.
Yeah, and so Dennis sent me 3 articles?
Yeah, and their articles this is the first time where I've seen rah-rah cord cutting people losing their shit at the same time that people who hate cord cutting are losing their shit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Normally you don't see those groups line up.
Right. And we'll get into why in a bit. First, I wanted to talk about, before we get into all that, there are some Ajit Pai shenanigans to discuss this week. So, you know how internet broadband, the standard was changed to 25 megabits per second? So for it to be considered broadband, it needs to be 25 megabits per second. Well, you know how Ajit Pai has been rah-rah about getting broadband expanded to more areas in the country.
Yeah, particularly to rural America.
Right. One of the things he's trying to do right now is to change the standard to 10 megabits per second.
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic, political move, right? When you... I was thinking about this earlier today. It's actually kind of funny. It's there are people that get things done, right? Mm-hmm. And then there are political actors. And there's a time and a place for either.
They're box checkers. They're I want to do this. I have this list of stuff to do, and it doesn't matter if I really do anything to make things better or to improve anything. I just need to check the box.
Well, and what I have always found with political actors is redefining the objective is modus operandum.
Yeah.
Right? So what they do is hey, we need to get broadband expanded to everyone. So a person who really gets stuff done is thinking about okay, how do I lay fiber all over the country, or how do I incentivize fiber to be laid by individual corporations, etc. That's how that type of mind works. But a political actor says, yeah, so that ain't gonna happen. So how do I redefine success?
Yeah, and that's what he's doing.
So that everybody says I was successful from the status quo.
Right.
And that's just
and the thing about it too is what he's gonna do is use, and I agree with that broadband, because we're getting to the technologies there to where you're able to measure. You can consider wireless as a part of that too. If you can hit that 25 megabits per second standard with wireless, that counts.
Yeah.
But he wants to do it for wireless at a 10 megabits per second standard. So the existing 4G network could do that. Right. You can hit 10. And I think that's the plan here is overnight he's going to change the law or the regulation and then immediately go, okay, now we have instead of what was it 60% coverage for broadband, now we have 80 something. Right, and it's complete bullshit.
Yeah, and it makes great headline news, right? Everybody looks at it and goes, wow, we made so much progress.
Right. And if
this
you haven't
Ajit Pai guy must be really doing great.
Because no one pays attention. And unfortunately, I mean, there might get an article written about it. I'll talk about it. Some other blogs will talk about it.
Be a handful of angry folks who pay a lot of attention.
But like your CNNs and like probably like your Washington Post and your New York Times, they're not going to put a reporter on this because it's really not that interesting to most people.
Even if they do, it'll be not buried's an exaggeration, but it won't be heavily reported.
No, because they're like, oh, that's a bunch of tech nonsense that really no one really cares about.
All right.
Unfortunately. So, I mean, unless you're like, I mean, maybe Vox might cover it. Or like,
I would suspect.
Right. But for the most part, it's just not going to be out there. So unless you're interested in this sort of thing, you won't know about it, which is probably, honestly, about maybe 10 to 20% of Americans, if that. So you have 80% out there. They're just going to think that they're just doing a bang up job getting broadband out to rural America.
Yeah. And what's really depressing about it, right, is that literally nothing will have changed from an actual implementation perspective.
No, it'll just like, we'll go to sleep.
Definition.
We'll go to sleep and we'll wake up the next day and miraculously we'll jump like 30% in coverage.
Yeah, and it's classic moving the goalpost.
Yes, yeah, and that's kind of like, it seems just like that's what he is all about. Like, how can I, how can I turn shit into Shinola?
Yeah, I made this like crack to someone back when I was a consultant a long time ago, and it was like I was working with this like GS-15, which in the government is basically like, pretty high up person. And he reported to a 2-star admiral, and like I had to convince him to do what he needed to do from an IT perspective. Mm-hmm. And it just back and forth, and this guy was not having it. And I was like, finally, I said, look, sir, right? The old man's made the decision, right? Like, we're gonna do this, right? Like, I'm the guy that comes in that makes chicken shit taste like chicken salad, right? So I can help you or not, and that's what it is. And finally, he was like, fine, right? And that's all Ajit's doing here is making chicken shit taste like chicken salad, right? Like, it's not a fucking thing he's changing about the actual network.
No, it's nothing at all. It's really just kind of redefining the standard and then patting himself on the back for doing nothing.
I get it, right? Like, if I was a tireless self-promoter, which, by the way, check out groundedreason.com. But, if I was a tireless self-promoter, right, like Mr. Pai, I would certainly worry about that, right? Like, but I just don't see it, right? Like, he's supposed to be a public servant, right? Like, this is something that is bigger than just his petty position.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the FCC. Not only is he a public servant, but the FCC is really an agency that's supposed to be kind of separated from the politics of your day-to-day politics. It's supposed to be an entity that acts on behalf of the people to kind of protect their interests when it comes to communications.
Well, that's why they split up the representatives to where they're from multiple parties.
Yeah. And it's not like, it's almost, I mean, I kind of look at it almost like the Supreme Court in a way.
Yeah.
Because the way it's supposed to work is you can appoint someone to the commission.
Yeah.
But they don't answer to you. They're free to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be having meetings with the president where the president talks to them one-on-one, Ajit Pai. But that's, that seems to be what's kind of happening right now.
Well, in if I remember correctly, there's also that court decision, which is that, like, even with a chairman's opinion, right, like swaying in the wind based on politics.
Yeah, there's an act.
The organization shouldn't.
Yeah, it's an act. It's called the it's the something administration act or agency act, where the agency has to act in accordance with its own precedent.
Right.
So if you change a rule, say I'm the commissioner of the FCC and I make some rule, and then Joel rolls in and says, I don't like that rule just because Joel doesn't like it, and he decides to change it.
I totally would do that.
I know you would. And so he decides to change it. He needs to actually give good reason and cause on why he's changing it, because he should be acting as the FCC itself, not as Joel's opinions and feelings.
Yeah, the collective body that is the FCC.
Right. So it's supposed to really just act as an entity, and it's really just like a new driver at the helm. In order to change policy, you need to show, good cause and why it benefits the public. And there's actually a stipulation that says that you cannot make rule changes that are arbitrary and capricious. So you need to actually prove it, which is pretty much why I think net neutrality, even if Ajit Pai tries to move on it, will eventually fail in court.
Which, by the way, I saw just the other day, like the comment total broke
it's
20 million. I think it was, last time I saw it was 20,350,000.
Yeah. There's also, this week, like I think actually, last week, they started kind of ramping up in Congress to talk about net neutrality and to actually maybe put some law into place. Problem is, they're inviting big companies to speak. I think like Google was invited and Facebook was invited. While that's fine, it's really not what net neutrality is for, because those companies could decide to, block or throttle. They could Facebook and Google could afford to pay the ISPs to kind of let up on that.
Yeah,
they could pay for the fast lane.
We talked about this a while ago with like Netflix, right? Like same idea. Like Netflix is the classic example that everybody uses of like, oh, woe is me, Netflix, if everyone starts getting throttled, And it's like, well, Netflix, we all forget, is actually an established company.
Right.
They've been around for like 12 years.
They've cut checks because people were throttling.
They'll be just fine.
Right.
It's really the next Netflix.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
And that's the problem, because like it's not companies that have already innovated.
Yeah.
It's the companies that might innovate in the future that are going to be hurt.
That are just gonna go poof.
Right. So if you have a market where, large companies can just sit there and, pay the tolls, the companies being hurt are the ones that are going to invent and make the internet better.
Yeah.
So that's really who they should be talking to, or startups.
Yeah, and I do, oh God, Dennis, I don't even know how to feel about what I'm about to say, but I do sympathize with Congress on this one. In this sense. Wow. That's weird, right? Like, that's very unlikely.
How'd you get that out there?
Yeah.
Like, that wouldn't have been able to pass through.
Yeah. Like, I feel weird, right? Yeah.
Maybe it was in there and your body just rejected it, and it just flew out of your mouth.
I threw up on myself. I think I threw up in my mouth a little. But I sympathize in this respect, is that when you're talking about like small actors in any market, it's really hard. Like, it's really easy to spot the big ones.
It is, right. It's true. That's true.
Really hard to spot who's the small ones you should invite to talk.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's some trade groups that they could get in there,
It's a doable thing, and trade groups would probably be the right way to go.
Yeah, but trade groups don't have deep pockets to donate to your coffers.
It's an interesting point, which is really the only point, right? Like, is that Congress, they like the Google.
They do.
Because they got the deep pockets.
And
that's all it is.
That's what it's about. So that's why they get invited. But, and I've said this before, like, granted, like, I'd much rather have Google and Facebook in there than AT&T and Comcast.
Absolutely.
But if you're going to write rules that are really going to benefit innovation, you probably want to invite some smaller players.
Well, and the reason why, at least I think, both of us kind of instinctively are like, oh, Google and Facebook, they're better than AT&T and Verizon to be in the discussion, is because like AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, etc., are natural regional monopolies when it comes to being an ISP.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
Whereas, Google and Facebook and so on, right? Like Microsoft with Bing,
They've actually had to
et cetera.
compete.
Yeah, they compete with each other,
Right.
right? Like they compete for ad dollars. So, like, right now, I don't worry about them so much, but it doesn't mean one of them doesn't take the other one's lunch money sooner or later.
Yeah, I mean,
right? Like they're big companies.
And that's and really that's what I'm saying is I want smaller voices in the room.
Yeah,
and smaller.
as
I mean,
counterbalance
as companies go, I think they should have equal representation in the room.
Yeah,
but get some smaller players in there.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we'll see. We'll see what comes of it. I'm always hesitant when it comes to Congress making laws just due to the influence that companies seem to have. But I guess it's better than having...
Just because of who they are.
Yeah. I guess it's better than having like a former Verizon lawyer making the rules, though.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Ajit.
So yeah, I just kind of wanted to update everybody on what's going on there. And I mean, at least he seems to kind of almost be backpedaling a little bit because he's, the fact that this is even going to Congress means that maybe he's a little hesitant. I think if I was Ajit, I'd be worried about this, like him making the decision holding up to a court challenge.
Like, honestly, I just am awestruck, dumbfounded. I'm looking for the words for hey, I've got this idea. My name's Ajit Pai. I'm going to put it out there. It's so bad, I broke the internet with 20.3 million comments against this idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's to be fair. I mean, a lot of those are,
Okay. Take a million or two and set them aside and say they're bots.
It's okay. Yes, that's what I'm saying. The bots, because it's definitely the comments. If you just look at pure, like, natural language comments where you can tell a person actually commented, it's way tilted in favor of maintaining the net neutrality rules.
And there are millions of them.
There are millions.
Is my point.
Right.
And like, take 5 million.
Right.
Take 10 million. Right? Like, at this point, if you took 10 million, if you cut it in half.
Yeah. I mean, and it's
been talking 10 million.
This issue has been pulled again and again, and it has bipartisan support. And there's very few things you can find Republicans and Democrats right now agreeing upon, and this is one of them. That the net neutrality must, be maintained. There's one thing that people agree on.
There's almost nothing you could get 80-something% of the country to agree on.
Yes,
almost nothing.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like, Nazis were in Charlotte. Nazis.
I mean, like...
a Nazi committed a terror attack in Charlotte. And I've actually talked to people that are like, yeah, but there was bad people on the other side too. Which made me crazy. Because I'm like, Nazis. So...
Right.
And I've seen polls where they've actually, like, asked people, like, how do you feel about, the president's statement where he pretty much said there are bad people on both sides. And net neutrality, like maintaining net neutrality has much more bipartisan support than
the condemnation of
Nazis.
All right, so I'm going to say it this way. I'm a simple guy. I align myself politically with Indiana Jones and Captain America.
Those are good guys to align with.
And in general,
in theory,
they're not real people.
Because Captain America did go Hydra in the comics at one point, so you got to be careful.
Look, okay? Everyone has their moments.
Everyone has a bad day.
It was a bad day. Guy's like 75 years old. Cut him a break.
That's true.
So, my point is, like, in general, if you are the enemy of Indiana Jones and Captain America, I'm probably going to say I don't like you.
Yeah, that's right.
So my point is, like, so many people were kind of back and forth on this topic because they, for whatever reason, they see more nuance than I do in my imaginary world, right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
where I separate my politics by Marvel and, Lucas, well, I guess that would be Spielberg characters, right? And I say, okay, fine.
But I mean, to be fair, Nazis is probably the one thing where there's not a lot of nuance.
I thought so, but let's say there's nuance. Let's cut people a break and say
okay.
there's nuance.
I will suspend my disbelief and say there is some nuance there.
Let's say hypothetically that if you were comfortable for some odd,
maybe I don't know,
reason,
he makes a good drink. I don't know. I'm not sure what the Nazi does that would make me say okay.
Have a great guacamole recipe. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, people are not cool with condemning them. People are more prone to condemning the idea of repealing net neutrality than of Nazis marching the streets in the United States.
I mean, and really all we're saying, net neutrality, good. Nazis, bad.
Yeah, I'm going to say it this way. Fuck me, I never thought I'd live in a world where I had to make an argument
Yeah, because I always assumed that, that's kind of like the natural evil. Like, if you're sitting there, because I really can't think of anything worse than Nazis. I mean, I'm trying hard and I can't find it.
No, I don't personally have the words. But I will say this. I certainly never thought someone would be able to sit down and craft a policy so shitty, Mr. Pai, that the American public would choose the support for Nazis.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah, look at this, Mr. Pai.
Yeah, just your idea sucks.
Your idea.
You suck.
Versus Nazis. And Nazis seem to be winning in public opinion.
Now, granted, they haven't been in a poll together.
No, they haven't. But I'm just saying, on the surface, when I'm looking at how the president spoke,
there's a lot
and how people reacted to it.
There's a lot of consensus on one side, which is, boy, repealing net neutrality is really fucking stupid.
Right.
And, hey, this other stuff we're not quite sure about.
Right, yeah. When you have a big group of it's about 30%. Of the people that I've seen
that are kind of hey,
the president seems okay with Nazis,
boys
so
will
maybe
be boys,
we are,
right? Oh god.
So that's where we are.
Fuck. Can we go on to the next topic?
Yes, we are. Let's go.
I can't.
Sorry, everyone, to bring you down on that, but that's kind of that's what's happening in our country right now. And
I'm just gonna throw my microphone.
Joel, don't throw your microphone.
Well,
because then the Nazis win.
Well, it's your microphone.
So that's true. So anyway, let's get on to a better topic. Actually, it's not really that much of a better topic.
I think it's kind of interesting.
It is.
It's not depressing.
No, it's not. It's actually surprising because it's the first time where I've seen journalists who usually cover cord cutting and agree with journalists that kind of deny cord cutting.
Yeah.
Basically, the last week we went into how Disney is kind of going to branch off, and they pulled a lot of their content. They're going to pull a lot of their kid content off of Netflix and kind of come out with their own streaming service. There's also talk that their Marvel content that's on Netflix, which I think expires in 2019, is going. It's not definite, but they're examining. Let's pull that back too. Which, if I'm Disney, I think that's probably your most lucrative product right now.
It's got to be up there.
So if I was going to make a streaming service, and I'm speaking purely from a comic book fanboy standpoint here, I would gladly fork over $10 a month to have an all comic book television show station. That's just me. So I think that's probably a lucrative.
I probably would too. I mean, if you're talking that's going to have, at least right now, right? That's going to have Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and the Defenders.
Right. And then if you count all the ABC stuff, where they have Inhumans and S.H.I.E.L.D., like, you could do a lot.
Yeah, would they be pulling
They
those
wouldn't,
back
but I'm
in?
just saying, like, if you're going to consolidate it over one streaming service.
Yeah.
And
That would be interesting.
there's also like a whole bunch of other characters they own that they haven't done anything with. Like, I think they own Ghost Rider, and I think they own the Punisher because he was in Daredevil.
Well, and they're supposedly rumors were that they were
going to put out
do his own show.
So and there's a whole, like,
which would be great.
Plus, there's a whole rogues gallery that goes along with all of those characters.
Yeah,
and then,
let alone if they ever figure out how to get X-Men back in the fold.
Right, and then you have a whole bunch of like minor characters that you could throw on. You could have a field day right there with a
dude. I mean, Iron Fist. I know I'm gonna offend the few Iron Fist.
Well, no, there's a lot out there. But think about, like, okay,
he's a relatively minor character.
Hey, Moon Knight. Moon Knight was a big book character that hasn't had
Moon Knight.
I did too. He has no TV properties right now. Yeah. Like, you could do a whole Moon Knight thing. I mean,
I don't know what that would look like.
Werewolf, Werewolf by Night. You could do, Sleepwalker. There's a whole bunch of stuff you could like pull off if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But anyway, we digress. A lot of people are losing their minds over this.
Yeah, and honestly, so I was talking to Dennis about this a little earlier. This is not an atypical thing that happens with the market, right?
Yeah.
Like, so just to set the proverbial stage, like, it's fairly common when, like, let's think of streaming technology and like decoupling as a business process content from internet access, right? Like, that's relatively new. 10 years, 5 years, depending on where you really want to think about it, as becoming a real viable business model, right? It's not unusual when something like that happens, right? When it really hits a point where it starts to become like a major player in the market. In this case, the market is like paid television, right? Or really just, video content of any sort. It's not unusual for there to be a dramatic dispersion of players in the market, right? Like, all of a sudden there's 100 car makers in the market. You saw this in like the 40s and 50s with like Tucker and all these other car makers and so on. And then it started to slowly creep back and consolidate, right? Like, because all the weak hands get pushed out of the market and people get bought up or they merge as equals or whatever, right? Like, so to me, the real key for this to be valuable, and a lot of the articles, which I'm hoping you'll share in the show notes.
Yeah, I definitely will.
That they're calling out like, oh, woe is me, we're going to end up right back where we started.
Well, it's a little bit of that, but it's also more like from the cord cutting side, it's like, don't ruin like this one article in TechCrunch is called "Don't ruin streaming by turning it into cable."
Right.
Which is really, like, the headline's kind of different than the actual article because it really kind of gets more into they don't want to have to pay like they don't want to pay like 5 times to get the content they want. They don't want to pay like 5 different people. And I'm like, well, that's kind of like it's a false argument.
Yeah, they're making actually the backwards argument.
Right, because like the reason why people are cutting the cord is because they'd
rather pay 5 people
they don't see
for exactly what they want.
They don't see the value in it. TechCrunch article, he really kind of gets into the fragmentation that's happening in the market. And he's worried about, all these networks now having their own streaming services. And you have to buy all these streaming services. And that's kind of a BS argument.
Yeah, well, it makes me wonder. So again,
because he's really like, I'm upset that it's not cable, is kind of what he's saying.
Yeah, and that's what. So the title of the article is what? Don't make streaming services cable or something like that,
right?
And so the implication from that, and I almost feel like the author of the article submitted this, and their editor wrote the title. Right, like,
it definitely seems that way
because the article is complaining that they have to now pay like 6 separate bills to get all their stuff.
Which is a la carte.
Which is a la carte, which is the total opposite of what cable's been, and has always been the knock on cable.
Yeah, because really, when you're looking at it, the whole point you leave cable is because you're spending all this money for hundreds of stations where maybe you watch a handful of them.
Yeah, you watch 15 and you're paying for 115.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. And I mean, this is a human problem. It's like humans just generally don't like change.
Right.
And this is big change because, but I mean, personally, I think it's changed for the better. And I think anybody who's actually cut the cord realizes that it's changed for the better. But you need to have that vantage point. If you're sitting there in like a cable TV package and someone's like, yeah, you're going to have to pay 5 different places to get the content you want. But you might, ho-hum about it. But you know what? You're probably paying more money for more content when you only watch about 5% of it.
Yeah. So,
and to be honest, most people aren't going to be paying 5 different places. I mean, currently
most pay like 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, most already have, and the funny thing is, most people already have
two
of them. Netflix and Amazon Prime, most people have already.
Yeah.
If not, they have 1, if not 2 of those.
Yeah.
So really, it's a decision on do you pick up, one of those live TV services like DirecTV Now, Sling, or Hulu. Or are you just happy with the stuff that's on the services you have? Because some people are. I was. Like, if I wasn't writing for the blog, I'd be content with just, Netflix, Amazon Prime. I would probably buy maybe 3 shows off of Amazon, and I would pick up HBO Now for maybe 3 months of the year.
So I would actually say, personally, where I think the market will eventually settle out. So backing up for a second, like about this idea of like, okay, once you get decoupling of content and internet service provider, right? Like you get this dispersion of many, many, many content providers, and then it starts to reconsolidate, right? The key in that market is the decoupling. Everything else will sort itself out over a few years.
Yeah, the market will. The market will work itself out.
The market will work itself out. And what will happen is we'll end up with a handful of different providers, and we'll be infinitely better off than when we started, because now the ISPs will have been forced to become more of utility functions than anything else, right? Yeah. They'll get you to the internet.
I mean, I don't want to offend anyone out there that currently has cable.
Yeah.
But I remember when I had cable, there were a lot of shows I watched that now I don't watch.
Yeah.
And I only watch.
You're no worse off for it. Right?
No, I think I'm better off, honestly, because I'm not watching garbage. I mean,
yeah.
If there's a show that I don't really want to pay for on its own, or like it's going to make me buy a service, then I really don't need to watch it. It's just kind of a time waste.
The nature of having a cable subscription, so where you have hundreds of channels or 100 or whatever, or even back in the old days of just broadcast, is channel surfing, right? And channel surfing is a passive way of viewing.
And I've said before, cord cutting isn't
the television on.
Cord cutting isn't for everyone. Yeah. If you love channel surfing, if it's like your thing, then cord cutting probably won't work for you.
No. Because like it's a very active method of consuming television or shows. Right? Stories.
Yes.
And like the thing that's interesting to me with all this is that you have this market. It's breaking up into all these different actors, right? It's starting, or it will start to reconsolidate. Like, I think the probably strongest hand in all of this is someone like Amazon. And the reason why I say that is if you look at the way Amazon provides its services, it has its unique content, like its own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then it has all of the things where it's worked out deals already, where it allows you to buy the show directly after, or you can get things through Amazon Prime.
Correct.
But in addition to that, It has the, hey, you can subscribe to, let's say, HBO Go or Stars through us. And you now only have one place to go to watch whatever you want, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
so,
Which is important. People want
yeah,
that aggregation.
of course. So you could see a world where there is a content provider like Disney, and they try their streaming service, and they realize, much like I think it was Verizon did with their streaming service, that it's crappy, right?
Right.
Like, they're just not good at doing it for whatever reason, right? Like, they're good at making content. They're not good at making a streaming service, right? Like, in Verizon's case, it was they're good at providing internet service, but they're not good at making a streaming service. So you get like an Amazon where they're like, hey, all we're going to do is make it a streaming service. We'll take a quarter off of every subscription and we'll pocket that, and we'll just provide you a platform, Disney, for you to show your content. That's where I think things will settle out in a few years.
Yeah. Well, I think I mean, it'll eventually, because the beauty of this is it makes content competitive.
Yeah.
So services will only survive if they're good and affordable. So if you might have a show that's nothing but reality. You might have a channel that's nothing but reality TV, but it's super cheap, so people pick it up and it does okay. I can see that existing in the future with this model. The thing is if you hate reality TV, you don't have to pay for it.
Right.
I mean, and that's good. That's not a bad thing. It's just different, and there's change, and people are just going to have to get used to it.
Yep.
But I don't see how that's bad. I don't see how more options are a bad thing, because, like, okay, for instance, the Times article, like one of the first things the person writes out of the gate, they basically wrote an article, and this one's titled "The Messy, Confusing Future of TV. It's Here," and goes into how they wanted to watch. First, you decide to watch one of your favorite shows, HGTV's Fixer Upper. You plop, in his case, you plop down on your couch, you turn on the TV, you boot up your streaming device, then you shuffle from app to app, trying to remember which of your half dozen streaming services has the program. Was it Netflix? Nope. HBO Go? Nope. Well, I don't know why he's looking at HBO Go for HGTV, but whatevs. Hulu Plus, it has the first 3 seasons, which you've already seen, but not the 4th. Okay, this person obviously really hasn't cut the cord. He already mentioned he's looking on HBO for HGTV shows.
Well, and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say the second thing I've noticed with with this type of consumption of content, when someone really takes the leap, right? They start to really quickly get to where they're comfortable with being a season behind. Right? Like, if you want the current season of a couple of shows, you go buy it.
Yeah, you pay for it.
Right?
Yeah.
And you pay for it and you're up to date.
Yeah. I mean, unless it's HBO or a service that you can just
Well, in
get
those
direct.
cases, you go get them for 3 months. You watch, Game of Thrones, and
or
shut
you
it
do
off.
what this person should be doing. Or anyone out there who's an HGTV fan, this is what you should do. Go get a live streaming service.
Yeah, like Sling.
Go
or
get Sling
whatever.
TV.
Yeah.
Go get DirecTV now. Go get Hulu TV, their live version, or one of those. If you like one of those channels, because you can watch them like you have cable, or a lot of them have cloud DVRs, so where you can record the show and watch it whenever you want.
Yeah.
So this person because HGTV. If you're an HD, and I actually kind of like looked into this a little bit, HGTV actually does really well when it comes to like how many people. They have a lot of shows. They don't have they have a couple shows that do well. They don't have a Walking.
They don't have a big show.
A Walking Dead or a Game of Thrones, but they have enough shows that get like 1 million or 2 million viewers that. They're they're
a big deal.
They are up there to a point where they're getting an average of like an almost network viewing.
Yeah. In like
ABC or NBC or Fox. They're actually getting to that level. It's like half of that, but that's above and beyond any
they're a big player,
cable TV channel. They're doing really well right now. And if you have a network like that, and the thing is if I asked an HGTV fan to pick like what shows they want, they're going to pick 7 shows that are on HGTV.
Yeah, it's just the network.
Right. So that's the people that should be buying like a Sling or one of those networks.
Well, because
you can get it. And if you're sitting there looking on Amazon Prime for an HGTV show, you're doing it wrong.
About it
you're doing it wrong.
Well, and I think so. The point that the person is making at a very high level, which is that like the current state of the market is confusing, is not incorrect. The current state of the market is kind of confusing.
It is. Because from an outsider.
You have to think about what is the right way versus the wrong way of doing things.
Right.
So, but that is not atypical of a market that's in transition.
No, I mean,
that's very normal.
Well, iPhone just comes out.
Yeah.
And I throw an iPhone in front of you, which is probably the most user-friendly phone that's ever been invented.
No, I don't think there's a debate about that. Yeah.
You're probably confused for at least, a day or two.
Well, I would say the market itself, so the iPhone 3 was the first one I got.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first phone where I was like, well, I love this thing. Everything else was a tool, right? Like everything prior to the iPhone 3, I was kind of like, this thing's okay. It's a hammer. I don't really have opinions.
Right. I was never a fan until.
But the iPhone 3, when I all of a sudden could have apps and I could personalize it and I could like get on the internet whenever I wanted, I was like, well, this thing is an extension of me.
Yeah.
I care about this. Right. That took time.
Yeah.
Right. First of all, the fact that I'm talking about it being number 3 means it took time. Right.
And that's like any cord cutter. Because I can tell this person didn't cut the cord, just because they're just not. They don't have the mindset. They don't. But once it's like swimming. It's like once you jump in the pool and you have to swim, and you figure it out. You just figure it out. Well, and anyone who dives in, they look up. They go. If you're having trouble figuring out where a show is, you go online. You say, "How do I watch HTV?" Hopefully, groundedreason.com comes up in the search. You click on the article, and it tells you if you're an HGTV fan, you want to pick up one of these services that kind of gives you it. Because if you're an HGTV fan, you probably 7 shows that are on that network, and you watch all of them, or just want to have it on while you're cooking or whatever.
Which is actually my wife does that,
right?
Because it's innocuous, and we have 3 little kids bouncing around the house, and so there's no violence, there's no profanity, and so on. So they can she can get a little bit of an entertainment, casual entertainment. And the kids are bouncing around, it works out well.
Right. And I mean, and that is a different breed of cord cutter than someone who say they like 5 or 6 TV shows and want to just be able to watch, movies or some type of Amazon or Netflix originals. That's a completely different breed of cord cutter.
Yeah. And I think the key thing that struck me about these articles is they are mistaking the virtue of this new market as the vice.
Right.
The virtue of this new market is lots of personalization.
Yes, because they're basically saying it's not like cable, so it sucks. Where anybody who's cut the cord says, well, cable sucks. So what's your point?
The thing, and this goes back to my point with Amazon earlier, where it's hey, I don't really want to cut a whole bunch of checks, right? And I know I'm not actually writing checks, right? Because it's 2017. What's a check?
I don't even know.
But I don't actually pay a variety of bills, right? Or I don't want to, right? I want to have a consolidator, and I'm willing to pay a little bit extra for that. I think that's where the market will go.
It will. I agree. But let's be fair.
The broader market, there are going to be plenty of people that
a lot of these services, it's just kind of automated.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not like it's a real hassle.
Oh, it's a credit card entry and so on. Yeah. So you don't need to do that. But I mean, like, I think for a lot of people, like something like Amazon where you can just click and you know how Amazon has the one click thing that just takes it right to your credit card and
Oh,
so
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Right. Like if I can do that with a subscription to Stars and, so on, that's pretty appealing, right? Like, and I already got Prime for the shipping,
Right.
right? Like before I even think about all the shows I watch on it. So I think that's where the market will eventually settle out. And when I say eventually, I mean in the next few years. And I mean that God, I hate this word, but paradigm will last until the next major market shift, which will be, 10 years from now. Who knows? Right? Like, but the idea of, again, the big point is decoupling the content from the internet service provider. Everything else is window dressing on this, right? Like everything else is administrative nonsense. Like, how do you pay for it? How do you find the show you want? Blah, blah, blah. Like all those things are interesting to the rest of us because we're trying to figure it out, right?
Right.
But in a couple of years, that'll all have sorted itself out. Someone will have realized that there's a lot of money in making that solution easy for people.
Mm-hmm.
And, we won't have to figure those things out anymore. And so, like, that decoupling, making that stick is the big deal.
Yeah. And like, there's also like a Washington Post article on this too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they said it's basically a similar topic to the Times article. Freedom from cable isn't free due to the flood of streaming services. It's going to make cord cutting more expensive, which isn't true if you're doing it right. I mean, of course, if you go out there and you buy every single service you see, it's going to cost you more than cable. But if you get your live TV service, I personally wouldn't need a live TV service. I'm kind of more of, I like to be more of an active kind of viewer and just buy the shows that I want to see.
Use an antenna for a lot of that
stuff.
stuff.
And that's what I was going to get to. Because a quote from the article, they were pretty much talking, and anecdotes, right? They grab somebody.
Yeah. And
it's kind of one of those pieces where it's just like, oh, this person said this, so I'm going to base my entire article around it.
Right.
I'm happy, I happily subscribe to Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime. This is what Diana Urban, she's a 30-year-old marketing manager and fiction author in Boston. This is what she has to say. She said, I happily subscribe to Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime, which all have a wide selection of shows and movies. But when I consider other streaming services, the costs add up. She signs up for HBO now during Game of Thrones season, which she also catches up on Veep at that time, and a few other shows. But, and this is what she says, paying $15 a month indefinitely for only 4 shows isn't worth it. And I'm like, okay, look, first off,
why would you pay it indefinitely?
Exactly. If you're
cancel it once you're done watching that season of the show.
Yeah, or where, yeah. Okay. And also, like, why are you carrying all of, like, Hulu? Okay, fine. Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime. Are you really getting the money out of all 3 of those? There's things you could examine. I mean, to see, like, if you're really upset about spending the money. I mean, you don't need all of it. Pay for what you watch, like, I'm sure if she has all these, if you have enough services, if you have 4 services and you want to cut back, you can.
For Christ's sake, how much television does a human being need to watch? But so I have 2 points on this. One is, I wish Game of Thrones ran 52 weeks a year.
Oh, I would, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's 10, right? Like, so
if you're lucky, because I think 10, this season it's only 7.
I think it's, I thought it was 8. Shit.
7.
I hope it's not 7.
Yeah, it's 7.
Oh,
it's 6 on the next one.
I think I'm actually a little angry at you.
Well, I know.
Telling me
for telling you the bearer,
bearer of bad news. I'm totally going to shoot the messenger on that.
Well, here's the thing, though.
Proverbially.
Really quick.
I won't.
This season's going to be 7. Next season's going to be 6. But you're getting a lot of production action in the episodes we've seen.
There's some dragons.
There's dragons. And I think that's what's happening is
dragons
like,
up in that.
If we want to have, and an Army of the Dead battle's coming soon. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to have dragons and an Army of the Dead battle,
that ain't cheap.
you're going to have to pay for it.
And so my point is, it's 7 weeks. So if you're really trying to penny pinch, cut the subscription after 7 weeks.
That's what I mean. That's what I advise.
You can't have watched all the current Veep episodes
Juggle
in 7 weeks?
Juggle your services if you really want to save that money. But
so, my second point was just this. And this is just a general caution to everyone out there. Like, again, like I feel like I'm harping on it, which I guess I probably am. But this is the nature of a market. Right? When it's sorting itself out, it's going to happen. I guarantee you will see more of these anecdotally based, confused articles from people being like, oh, this is a disaster, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll all be on the other side of this, and we'll be like, oh, God, do you remember when we used to not have penicillin?
Oh, I know, seriously.
Right? Like, and that's what it will feel like. Oh, do you remember when we used to pay one huge bill and we would pay for the boxes where the channels came in on?
And there was 100 channels we didn't watch and we had to pay for them. Yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. And that's the thing is if you look at, like, I went and looked up, like, the top 100 shows between network and cable.
Yeah.
Top 100.
Yeah.
How many do you think were cable TV shows?
Oh.
Out of 100 shows?
50.
5.
Really?
5. 5 shows out of, if you look at, and this is all viewership. It's not just the key demo. All viewership. Out of 100 shows, only 5 made it into the top 100.
I'm assuming it's Walking Dead. Game of Thrones.
Nope.
No?
Well, that is because Game of Thrones wasn't on in between that year because they had a long extension. It would have been probably because I think Game of Thrones would have been behind Walking Dead.
I don't even know what it would be after those.
Talking Dead.
Okay.
Because lead in. Gold Rush on Discover.
I don't watch
a lot of people
but
watch
I know
that.
Of it. Yeah.
American Horror Story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, love that show.
Major Crimes on TNT.
Really?
Yeah. And that's when you look at all demos. Now, if you look at the key demo, which is, I think, it's at 18 to 49.
18 to 49.
Something like that. There's more diversity in that demo, which means it's going to spread out your viewership. And that number ups to 17.
Well, like the NCIS viewership level for like the over 60 crowd is unbelievable.
Right.
Like that show towers above, and
that's
I don't
funny
get
part.
it.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't really know anyone that watches NCIS, but it does. And that's the funny part is it's got a huge viewership, but it can't sell ads because they're all outside the key demo. Right. So, but anyway, so even if you look at that, that's 5% of shows.
Yeah.
And if you look at the key demo, it's 17% of shows because, but that's that's diversification. One person probably isn't watching all 17 of those cable shows. No. So let's just say, let's cut a happy middle there and say 10 or 11% of the shows people watch are actually cable because the rest are all on network and that's free with an antenna.
Yeah.
So are you really going to, why pay hand over fist?
Well, the other thing that should tell you, right, is that there's a whole hell of a lot of what they call long tail in the market, right? Like, so
a lot of a niche show. And I don't disagree.
Long tail, just basically refers to like a graph where it's
we've explained it. Yeah.
Oh, we have? Okay. So yeah, a lot of niche shows. So like when you're talking cable and streaming services and so on, there's just tons of people watching lots of much smaller shows. that make up, a lot of the rest of the viewership. And so I look at this and go, yeah, I don't get why anyone would be concerned about where we're going.
No, it looks like a natural fit for people, how people watch television, actually, because
Yeah.
you can sit there and say, all right, here's the 7 shows I watch and be done with it.
Well, and again, I forget which one of the 3 articles. I think it's the Times one, but it could have been the Post. Made the one point of, I don't feel like cutting a check to a bunch of different places, and I get that. But I think that's a solvable problem. Like, I think that
People will enter that market.
exactly.
They'll aggregate it. And you're like, hey, you know what? Cut me 1 check. I'll manage your
I think
subscription
that is
service for
a
you.
very, frankly, from a technological perspective, it's nothing.
No, that you take take 5% or 10% or whatever it is off the
it's
top and manage it
It's
for 'em.
really the lawyers haggling over that. That's the hard part, And even that, most of these companies, especially Amazon with most of these content providers, has already got some agreement with them, right? So figuring that out, the only one that I think could be a true holdout where they really push their streaming service and hang on for a while, probably past where they should,
Mhm.
is Disney. And we'll see how they do with the streaming service, but they're rookies at it.
Yeah, well, that actually, but they did buy
Yeah,
MBAM.
you told me about
Yeah, they
that,
did
right.
buy them, and
If
so they
they're
bought a
smart,
really good, because MLB TV is actually a really good streaming service, and so I think they'll be okay. Disney usually is pretty good about going into new ventures. They usually do a good job.
I mean, they've had some bonehead moves in the past too, but yeah, in general,
Oh, they have, but I mean, modern Disney seems to be pretty
they're
good.
pretty clever.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone's curious, I did here. I'll pull up, because there is, I looked at the top 50 cable telecasts for the second quarter of 2017, and I mean, and this is just in cable, so it doesn't really count any network shows. But
What's the top 5?
well, and this is like the number of its episodes.
Okay.
So when you're really looking at it, top 50 episodes watched, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, only 10 networks into top 50 episodes watched. Those are AMC, USA, Fox News, VH1, Bravo, TNT, Investigation, Discovery, BET, Discovery, and HGTV. Those are really the only networks that showed up. That doesn't count premium networks like Starz, HBO, and Showtime. They were not included, but those are pretty much, the major networks in quarter 2 that people watched.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's not very many channels.
It's not. And if you really look at it, I would say if you take the whole year, because, different shows come up, and I've actually looked at, if you look at like April,
Right.
we're not kind of close to sweeps. There's a different set of shows on than, say, now over in August. But if you look at it, if you compare both, there's really only about 10 networks that get an average viewership of about 1 million a day or more. It's very low compared to network, which makes me think that, it's prime for people to just go and, pick the handful of episodes they watch and just buy them directly.
Yeah.
I mean, because it came down to when my wife and I sat down and said, what are we going to, what's important for us to watch? We could really only name about 7 or 8 shows.
Yeah, that's about right.
And if you buy those directly from Amazon, that's, say 8 shows, that's about $200 a year.
Yeah, I mean, again, like the one big difference there I can see is like if you're really into one of those background noise channels.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying.
That's a different thing.
It's a different breed. And that point, you want to go and buy one of those live TV services that you can get over the internet.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. It's just
No.
different.
But and basically what I'm saying is there's a solution for everyone out there who wants to watch TV without cable.
Yep. I agree.
All you have to do is kind of look into it. And the best thing to do is to just kind of just jump in and figure it out. Because you can plan all day, and if you have a cable box sitting there, it's just so easy to just hit the remote and turn it on and use it. you'll probably never cut the cord if you do that. It's best to just cancel it. I've said this before. Joel says this before. They'll take you back.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't like cutting the cord, they'll gladly take your money.
Yeah, if you
want to come back
cancel your subscription with, Comcast, your money is just as green when you come back the next day.
Yep, they're not going to be upset.
No.
They'll gladly hook your service back up.
Yep.
So it's really no risk. Just give it a shot. Trust me, I think most people will find it's worth their while to do.
Yeah.
So, before we close out, because we're wrapping this up, I wanted to let people know, because we mentioned the Mayweather-McGregor fight that's coming up.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually going to be on Sling, too. Sling just announced, I think a couple days ago, that they're going to offer it as well on pay-per-view. So if you're a Sling TV subscriber, you can check that out, slingtv.com.
Cool.
So there's another way to watch it. And I think that's pretty much all we got this week. So if you're enjoying the show, hit the subscribe button.
Love that.
Yep. Leave us a review on iTunes. We always like that. If you want to, ask us a question or you have a comment, you can email us at podcast@groundedreason.com. You can look us up on Twitter, handles @groundedreason. We have a Facebook page. Of course, you can always go to groundedreason.com and leave a comment. We're always, glad to hear from you. We're happy to answer questions. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. We just want to hear from you. So let us know. Thanks for listening. This is Dennis Rostaro.
And this is Joel Reeves.
And we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Except for you Nazis out there.
Yeah, I mean,
don't take care.
Seriously,
yeah,
fuck
don't.
you
Yeah,
guys.
screw you guys.
Not good.
Not good at all.